Well, good evening and welcome to week 8. So I think you probably recall that early on in the semester I said that I wasn't going to use the webinars to give any lectures. I lied. Only partially. Tonight you get probably a mini lecture of maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes. Excuse me. We're going to talk about innovation. Innovation is one of the hot topics. I've studied the area for years. I get very excited about it. I'm looking forward to your discussions this week. Let me say that again. I'm looking forward to your discussions this week. Right now, we're not seeing a big plethora of discussions running through the queue, so let's get moving on that. I realize it's already Thursday. It may be later by the time you see this, if you see this, and that's up to you again. So let's get right to it. You don't have to look at me all night. So tonight, my lecture is going to be on why do organizations struggle with innovation? And we're going to do a somewhat comparative analysis of corporations that succeed and those that don't. But we really want to understand a little bit better about what innovation is and how we can apply it. So why do you care besides it's week 8 and it's on innovation? So I do have a news flash for you. As you prepare to graduate and be awarded your MBA, as you go back to your day jobs, people will, I hope, look at you differently. And what I mean by that is they are going to look at you in a different way. You're going to be seen as a thought leader in your organization. You should consider yourself a thought leader in the organization. And one of those reasons is they're going to look at you for your thoughts on innovation. So do you have any thoughts on innovation? Please take heed, do the readings this week, actively participate in the discussions. But I'm hoping this is the start of your academic journey, and that innovation may be one of those branches that you, like me, really become fascinated with. And it could be a key facet of your professional path in almost any direction. And I think I've got a pretty good handle on where most of you are in your professional careers at this point. Understanding and applying innovation could be really the key differentiator between getting you to your professional dreams. It's also important that we understand the distinction of what innovation is and what it's not. And I think you're going to find that everyone is not clear on what innovation is, and that could be one of the most important management challenges that you face. I think a good example of that is the picture on the right, if you see it, and I will make the PowerPoint slides available. Novel protein science at pet food innovation workshop. So my question would be, pet food, you can be innovative in pet food. Can you have an innovation workshop and suddenly just go and make a new brilliant product in a 2 or 3 day innovation workshop? Is that how it's really done? I'll leave that up to you all to decide. You can see there's a new kibble technology workshop. That's fantastic. So we're going to talk about the definition of innovation, some good, some bad, how to know the difference between the good and the bad. Look at a few case studies, really, just briefly to touch on. The relationship of innovation and organizational culture cannot, I believe, be understated. It's extremely important. And we're only gaining now a professional academic understanding of that relationship. Some concluding thoughts, and then I'm hoping this follows up into any discussion you have online this week. So innovation seems to be everywhere. And I've just used some examples here. So you can have innovative wind turbine designs. Is your company innovative? Jump the curve with big, hairy, audacious ideas. Does a big, hairy, audacious idea mean it's innovative? Innovative cyber programs, one of my favorites. So I work in the cyber domain, and so innovative and cyber to me are two of the most misunderstood and overused terms in the profession. So putting those two together for me is really something. And so I ask you to think about, is the term innovation thrown about too loosely? Are we more innovative today than we were 50 years ago? Why do you think that is, if so? Or do we just use the term all over the place? So what is innovation? Webster has a definition: a new idea, device, or method, the act or process of introducing new ideas, devices, or methods. The Business Dictionary translate an idea or innovation into good or service that creates value, but to be called an innovation, it must be replicable at an economical cost and must satisfy a specific need. Hang on to that specific need. A deliberate application of information. It is not happenstance. I really like the third bullet down. Edison, Ali, and Torker in 2013 found that there were over 40 definitions from 1949 to 2010. And so they derived, and it's a really interesting paper, by the way, but they took a look at it and said innovation is production or adoption, assimilation, and exploitation of a value-added novelty in economic and social spheres, renewal and enlargement of products, services, and markets, development of new methods of production, and establishment of new management systems. It is both a process and an outcome. For me, what I like about that definition is the last sentence. It is both a process and an outcome. You really do have to have both. For the rest, I have some issues with it, and I don't want to waste all of your time right now, but it's more than just new or a new application. There does have to be value added. Renewal and enlargement of products, to me, doesn't sound bold enough, big enough. It sounds almost like a new iteration, going like from version 1 to version 2. And in most cases, for me, going from version 1 to version 2 of anything, software or car, is probably not necessarily innovative. So my thoughts, innovation is big. It's not incremental change. I'm using Kaizen tonight in 2 areas. So here I'm talking about the Kaizen management process, which is continuous improvement, incremental steps, management oversight, the engineering processes, the development of systems engineering. So these are incremental, small little baby steps. That's not what innovation is. Innovation is big. So that's the second point. It can be disruptive. It may be disruptive. You probably don't know innovation is going to be disruptive until it's too late. So there's a bit of, it's the genie out of the bottle for me when we're discussing innovation. Innovation increases an organization's risk at least until fully implemented. And again, that's the value basis that we talked about up above with Edison, Ali, and Torper. It doesn't happen in a day. An idea can develop in a day, not innovation. That gets me back to the pet workshop, okay? So you could have great ideas in a pet workshop. It's probably not an innovative idea. It's probably an idea workshop. So there is a distinction. We can all have great ideas, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily innovative. If any of you want to see a really funny movie, see Night Shift. So Night Shift, which is a comedy from years ago, is based on someone that works in the coroner's office at night, but hasn't, and this is in the 80s. So it's actually Ron Howard's first movie that he directed. And it's about a young guy working the night shift in the coroner's office who walks around all day with a tape recorder talking about his great ideas. So his great ideas including, I know, I'll feed tuna mayonnaise before we dish them up, and then I don't have to mix up the tuna, and we'll have automatic tuna fish. That is not innovation. Frankly, that's not even a very good idea. But it's important you understand the distinctions between an idea and innovation. It's got to be supportable by the organization. And when I say the organization, that's on purpose. Innovation to be implemented is likely not an individual activity. An idea can be an individual activity, not an innovation, not to be adopted anyways. It doesn't happen in a day. You may not know how or what the innovation will influence, including that value to the organization. So we'll talk about a little bit later about Steve Jobs. I don't believe Steve Jobs really necessarily understood the value or cared about the value of the organization as a lot of his innovative ideas, and it wasn't necessarily his ideas, but the implementation really from a management perspective for him. I don't think he really cared. He just knew there were big things and that would lead to other big things. That's just my opinion. And the innovation process may be repeatable. That doesn't mean the innovation itself, that means the process. So large corporations, Boeing, for example, has an innovative process. And in most cases, it's a management process. It devolves having part of their budget dedicated to innovative activities. It could be individual research and development, which most corporations have, but it's how it's managed. It's the degree of risk that that firm is ready to accept. And we'll talk in a little bit about the difference between small, medium, and large organizations and their application of risk as it relates to innovation. So do we really understand what innovation is? You can read the Machiavelli. It's long-hearted. It's a long one. I do like Drucker's innovation is the purposeful and organized search for changes. So there are deliberate acts, and that leads me back to the repeatable process. A corporation can continue to take on deliberate acts. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the same results or the same number of innovative outcomes, but you could. So we need a common understanding so we can plan and implement innovation, but also so that we can research and learn about innovation. You've got Elon Musk in your left picture, and over to the right is the picture of one of his first solar homes based on solar shingles, not on solar tiles. Elon Musk, I'm going to leave that open if you think he's an innovator or not. Elon didn't invent solar shingles. Solar shingles have been around for decades. There are other companies that produce them. Many companies that produce them at less cost than Elon Musk, who just advertised his cost about 2 months ago. But Elon is someone who's always searching for change and for those opportunities. I guess I'm going to throw out a question to you all, and that is, can it hinder your innovation if you already believe you have the solution at the early stages of innovation? I just throw that out. I'm not going to say anything more about Elon Musk. Okay, I'm going to say one more thing about Elon Musk. Elon is brilliant. I won't question him on that. But here's one thing I would say. One, Elon at this point has a number of business interests that are out there, and most are not turning a profit. So the closest would be Tesla. His solar shingles are probably not going to make a profit for 7 to 10 years, if ever, because of the cost factor, and it will become more competitive if he starts gaining an advantage in the field. And Elon has been throwing around a lot of his own money, and he now only has about $1 billion left. So to most of us, $1 billion would be pretty good. We could probably live on that and squeeze by. But if you're a true innovator on the scale that Elon Musk is, what it really means is some of these ideas need to start coming to fruition and be seen of value, or he is not going to be able to continue to invest in his own ideas. Just newsflash. Innovation can be seen in many different forms. So the upper right is the Eames lounge chair, developed in the 1950s by Herman Miller Furniture Company in Zeeland, Michigan. The Eames lounge chair has become the classic lounge chair and is the equivalent of showing that you've got success to having a Bentley in your garage. If you have a Bentley in your garage because you want to prove to your neighbors how successful you are, you probably have an Eames lounge chair in your office to show your fellow executives and your colleagues the same thing. Now, the interesting thing is the Eames lounge chair literally recreated the furniture business not only for Herman Miller, but for Steelcase Incorporated, which is just up the street in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the world's largest producer of office furniture, because they suddenly had to become competitive with this new little startup company, which was really just a small little firm before, whereas today Herman Miller is about the same size as Steelcase. They still produce the Eames chair. So I would say that really has been an innovative product. Guy Kawasaki has some good thoughts in innovation. Focus on the meaning and not the money, and I really can't think of a true innovator that from day one was focused on the money. Again, kind of going with the Kaizen theory, do not drive for slightly better. It is not going from version 1 to version 1.2. That is not innovation. Don't strive for perfection. I think others could strive for perfection, but the innovation team should not. So people will use your product in ways that you didn't anticipate. The Mao theme of let 100 flowers blossom. I really think that's important. Again, as I talked about before, don't focus too much on the use as you're in the opening stages of innovation. Keep it going. That's very important. Innovation is not a static process. There has to be fluidity, there has to be movement, there has to be change. And that includes, I believe, even from the idea process. So ideas themselves can become stagnant. And yes, be unique. I don't think you have to worry about being unique, but a truly innovative idea is probably unique. So here's the good of innovation. Here's James Naismith, inventor of the game of basketball. I'd say that's truly innovative, still being played in 2017, obviously. It's probably at its high point right now from a business perspective. Innovation can add value to your organization, and I do want to emphasize the can. Innovation may take many years, if not a decade or more, to be realized as far as value added. And we'll talk about how that can become a challenge. It can leave your competition in the dust. Innovation can brand your organization as successful, a leader in its field, can bring fame and success to your personnel. And it's not just your personnel. If your industry has innovative people in it, it generally attracts other innovative people as well. Innovation can bring opportunities that could not be imagined without it. It can literally recreate a company. So some of the bad, it generally adds risk to the organization, requires organizational change, which we'll talk about in a minute, and really buy-in from the firm. And I don't just mean from management and leadership, I mean the firm. So, you know, I spent a lot of time visiting companies, and you could tell if a firm is innovative based on the discussions in the hallway, how people interact, what they're talking about. So sure, you can hear people talk about the Tigers-Orioles game last night and how it went. That's fine and dandy. But when they're talking about work, how are they talking about work? Are they talking about new products, new ideas, new papers that they've just read, new engineering concepts that they just heard about at a conference? And that's the thing. It's a thirst for knowledge. Anyone, I believe, can have ideas, but I don't believe anyone or any organization certainly can be innovative. So it does take money, time, people, and the value may not be immediately realized. So obviously that's a challenge for a firm. At some point, someone on the C-level, probably the CFO or the COO, is going to ask, okay, show me the revenue stream. What does this look like? And that person is probably not going to like the answer of, well, I'm going to have to get back to you in 3 to 5 years. So there's a challenge there. And bullet 5, innovation does not always increase revenue. So 1985, Coca-Cola put out its biggest marketing plan in its history, of the company at the time, into a product called New Coke. Most of you probably don't remember New Coke. I do vividly. And New Coke was taste tested. It was researched. It was supposed to be the most phenomenal flavor. And believe it or not, scientifically, quantitatively, Coca-Cola could prove, based on user tests, blind user tests, that New Coke was by far preferred to what we know today as Coca-Cola, and in the can there, Coca-Cola Classic. It bombed. It bombed because Coca-Cola forgot one thing, and that was the unblind customer. Customers wanted Coke, and when they saw it, I don't know the psychological change, but they did not want a can that said New Coke. They did not want a new flavor. Coca-Cola is what they wanted. They didn't get transition partners from Pepsi to switch over to New Coke. They got no one, and it was an abysmal failure. So my point is, at some point, the customer and the value added does have to be considered from an innovative perspective. So know the difference between the good and the bad. Let's talk a little bit about the culture. The culture is very important. So Dr. Amavil, who teaches at Harvard Business School, has some good points on on the model of organizational innovation. So I'm going to go right down to there. I talked a little bit about the culture up above. What are people talking about? What are they working on? What's the management focused on? And can you identify a culture of innovation? I believe you can. I'd be happy to share more thoughts with you on that. So Amavil says individual creativity must be considered as a crucial element in the process of organizational innovation. And what she means by that, I believe, is not just that you have creative people, but that your organization reinforces and cultivates creative people. They want creative people. And they set up an environment that cultivates ideas. So I think that's really important. All aspects of the organization that can influence innovation must be considered, not just creative departments. Again, it's that culture. It's knowing that that's really important. The organization should model the implementation process for innovation. It should be supportive of that process. Everyone, frankly, should understand there is a process. And organizational innovation must describe the influence of organizational factors on individual creativity. You can have creative individuals, but you really need an organization that is innovative. I believe all that's very true. Is innovation right for everybody? So I'm going to give you a few of my hypotheses because I can, and you don't have to agree with them. So Smucker's makes strawberry jam. I love on Saturday mornings having a fresh bagel with cream cheese and strawberry jam. And to me, Smucker's strawberry jam is perfect. And I don't know the production process, but my bet is they haven't put a dime into changing the process. They probably updated the machinery. That's great. I hope they keep it clean. That'd be swell. But they make Smucker's strawberry jam probably how they made Smucker's strawberry jam in 1975, and I'm just fine with that. So my first hypothesis is innovation can occur with products, services, or management activities. Innovation rarely is achieved concurrently in multiple areas. So split my thought there. So the first is, should all organizations practice innovation? I don't think you necessarily have to. If you're a mature organization and you have revenue streams that are not dying out, i.e. Smucker's, you're probably okay. So now let's go on to my hypothesis. There are different types of innovation. I know we're reading about that this week, and that's great. And there are different types of innovation. But I have rarely seen where innovation by a major firm is successful at all times in many ways when they are taking on product innovations, service innovations, and management innovations all at the same time. Even large firms really have a challenge with that. Just a thought, just my thought. You can disagree. There is, I also believe, a relationship of the size of the organization and acceptance to innovation. So my second hypothesis is innovation is greater with startups and large organizations and less with medium than it is with medium organizations. Medium-sized organizations, I believe, 100 to 1,000 employees, are the least innovative. And it goes back to the factor that you're accepting greater risk. And because you're accepting greater risk, you may be accepting languishes in revenue streams or even a loss of profit for a prolonged period of time. And small and medium enterprise organizations can neither adjust to that, nor can they cut off, say, like Boeing can in the center screen, and take a large cadre of people, say 5% of the firm, and put them to work on innovative ideas that, again, may not generate revenue for several years. Small and medium enterprises can't do that. They are in a dog-eat-dog mindset. Frankly, they don't want to become even smaller, and they want to get larger, so they need to grow, and revenue is the most important. So for me, the most restrictive environment is, in fact, the medium-sized organization. Small ones have to be innovative, but you also don't have to probably agree to many people. If you have a firm of 10 and you're the CEO, you're probably accepting of greater risk. One, you stood up your own small company, or you were hired because you can accept that risk and drive it to the next level. But you probably have to be innovative to literally survive. Innovation doesn't just happen. This is a lot of, you can read this on your own from Lessing, The Architecture of Innovation. But the easy question is, you may, as soon as you're finished listening to this rant, turn on Netflix. You're not going to go put in your Blockbuster VCR. There are no Blockbusters, and I believe there are one or two of them left in the entire continental United States. And so because of that, first off, there is no reason, and don't get me wrong, Blockbuster tried way too late, that Blockbuster couldn't be the Netflix of today, but they weren't. And I would also say, so part of it was the technology was there. Netflix clearly led on the innovation side from understanding the products and services that could result, whereas Blockbuster had a brick and mortar mindset and didn't understand that maybe people didn't want to go to the store, so Netflix was way ahead and starting to mail you your DVDs, and then obviously gave you the streaming options years later. Blockbuster was always behind, and generally being a laggard is never going to be a good thing. So they lost what was clearly an opportunity. It doesn't just happen. Management innovation example, I told you I was going to use Kaizen twice. So this is very interesting to me. Kaizen, which in Japanese largely means change for better, was actually developed in the United States by Deming along with McFoy and Mellon. And Deming was actually instrumental in adapting systems engineering approaches throughout the defense industry during the 1940s. He was so successful that he was recruited to go to post-war Japan, where they were having production challenges across the board, specifically in their family and auto industry. So Deming went, and Kaizen was adapted, and their quality control improved, and today we all drive Toyota cars. So that's the short story. Using Kaizen in business, as I already said, is not truly innovative from a management practice. But making the strategic decision to apply Kaizen to a post-war environment where there was a shattered economy, where they had no understanding of Kaizen in the first place, where they didn't understand systems engineering, was truly innovative. And in fact, probably is largely credited with one of the reasons the Japanese economy recovered so rapidly, and why today 6 out of 10 of us are driving Toyota cars. So there you go. I like to talk about one of my heroes, Edgar Schein. He's in the upper right corner. He just retired from this. He was the Sloan Chair at MIT on organizational culture. I think he retired about 7 years ago. Edgar Schein literally coined the expression organizational culture and understood innovation from his experience looking at the Digital Equipment Corporation, upper left, and that's their former CEO, DEC. DEC was the Apple of the 1970s and 80s. And they were a firm that was unsurpassed in their computers. You can see a large mainframe in the lower left. From the 1950s to the 1990s, when they went out of business, and their assets were actually acquired by Hewlett-Packard. So DEC said, and this is the CEO, same guy in the upper left corner, you can see him in the center screen, there is no reason for any individual to have a computer in his home. So not understanding the opportunities really held back DEC, and DEC became a laggard in making decisions, and they became victims of their own decision cycle, which was laborious, had multiple steps, had mid-level managers doing their own review process before things got up to the upper level management. They were not strategic thinkers, and they went out of business. So that shows what happens if you're not innovative. You have to be innovative from a management perspective, but you also have to set up the culture where innovation is accepted. So, and you can see the book DEC is Dead, Long Live DEC, written by Ed Schein. The importance of that book is that the culture didn't want to hear of DEC, did not want to hear anything about innovation. There were plenty of brilliant engineers, world-class computer engineers, who saw the value added of the personal computer, and DEC could be the Apple of today, but they're not, because that culture quashed them. I want to talk about what I would say is another failure, though they're trying to make a comeback, and that is the United States Department of Defense and their culture on innovation. So first, the acquisition process in the Department of Defense has largely not changed since the 60s and 70s. DIUX, the Defense Innovation Unit Experimental, was established by the Secretary of Defense under President Obama to set up offices in Silicon Valley, Boston. Now they have a third office in Austin, Texas. If those three areas are significant to you, it's because those are key hubs of innovation, right? And they are there to serve as a bridge between the military and companies operating at the cutting edge of technology. So it has been an abysmal failure. The entire leadership of the organization was fired previously. They're now in their third round of leadership, and they are constrained by the internal politics of the Pentagon and the acquisition process. It's not that they don't have good people. It's not that they don't talk to the right companies. First off, they don't understand the private sector and the culture therein, where they don't necessarily want to provide service to the military for one simple reason. They can't make enough of a profit, right? So the typical services contract for the Department of Defense is between 6.5% and 8.5% after you figure all your labor costs. So you're not going to find a venture capitalist that's going to give any money to a Silicon Valley firm who's only going to provide a 6.5% profit. So they don't understand that. That's first off. And they didn't have contracting authority. They now do. And they have still limited acquisition authority. And as I've noted, until you change that culture in the organization, you're not going to be innovative. Let's talk a little bit about Apple, Microsoft, Jobs, and Gates. Two very different approaches, and I'll leave it up to you to figure out. One, I believe they're both innovators. I believe both Gates and Jobs were innovators in different ways. So Jobs really isn't a great programmer, never was, never necessarily was the idea person, but had the propensity to see the potential of ideas that were already being developed, and he was the cultivator. I would say, like no one else, he could look and cultivate ideas, and he didn't always have the vision on things were going either, and he didn't really care. He had a bit of Kaizen in him, I want to note, because he was always looking for that perfection. And in some ways, I think that held back the firm at certain points. But it's hard to argue with his success and the culture that he has now bred into Apple, and that lives on long after him. Gates, on the other hand, it was a risk taker, dropped out of Harvard, started his own company. Lodi put everything in the back of a car. But I think, he wasn't really a success. I think he only had $37 million in the bank by the time he was 30. And I hear he's doing okay today. The interesting thing about Gates is he was a programmer, he was a plotter. I have a challenge thinking of him, however, as an innovator for one reason. Gates did understand the bottom line. For Gates, it was, for quite some time, about money. But I want to attribute both of them to always having an idea on thinking about what the consumer wanted. Now, you could argue that they would have come up with different answers, which is why some of us today are using Macs and some of us are using PCs, and that's okay. But they both thought about it. And thinking about the customer and the application and how it's used is the point I want to make. It's very important that you consider innovation a cycle and a process, not an idea. It needs to be cultivated. It needs to be plotted through. It needs to be worked. And you need to understand the consumer. So the distinction I would really make between the two is Jobs didn't want to think about the profit margins of something as much as he could, maybe to his chagrin at some point, including where he got fired. Gates possibly thought about it too much, but it's hard to argue with one of the richest people in the world as far as their success, and Microsoft's still doing well. And by golly, if this wasn't put together on a PowerPoint production, so there you go. I want to make a point on Apple stores because that's tied to the culture as well. So the first Apple store, I believe, was opened in McLean, Virginia. The second one right up the road from me in Bethesda, Maryland. And I can recall the first time I saw an Apple store, and there was a line around the block, and it was in Bethesda. And I remember saying to myself, why are these people standing in the line to buy something? And first, let's understand that Apple didn't need stores. They were generating oodles of cash and revenue. They didn't need stores. This is a place for culture. You go into an Apple store and there is no experience like it. And I would, if we had more time in this course, I would challenge you all in one weekend to go into an Apple store and go into a Microsoft store and talk about your experiences. They are not the same. And now I can tell you, I have gone into both to purchase small items that I didn't need because I wanted to see the interaction. And Jobs understood that. So part of Apple stores are frankly about culture. And now they are also huge revenue generators from a brick and mortar perspective. So brilliant on him. And I will tell you that an Apple store is in and of itself innovative. So potpourri for 1,000 just means we're going to talk about a few things, and let me get off my soapbox in a few. Individuals can have one-off innovative ideas and be successful, yes, if they're supported by a corporation. Corporations cannot. Corporations need to have, my point is, they need to have a culture of innovation in order to succeed or be stagnant. I did make the exception. Smucker's would be one. There's a time window for decisions on innovation, and missing that window closes the opportunities or increases risk, or both. That I should have made that one of my hypotheses. Innovative ideas may bubble up from individual creativity. They must be fostered and supported from the top down. So it's great that everyone who you work with thinks it's a fantastic idea. At some point, you need management buy-in, and because they, one, set the culture and they set the organization, but also they set the priorities on how funds will be allocated. Innovation can be a process and needs to be instituted as a subculture in successful organizations. Go to Apple, go to Microsoft, and you'll see that. And the driving factor is not about competition or revenue, but you can you can stomp out your competition, and you can increase your revenue streams by both. So I'm going to leave you just a few questions. How can you tell if a company is innovative? What are the challenges with not having a shared understanding of what innovation is for both academics and practitioners? I try and consider myself both. When you think of innovation, which companies do you think of and why? And do you believe that innovation is a repeatable process? So that's all I've got for you tonight. I apologize it took a little longer than I wanted to, but I get pretty excited about innovation. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. This, as well as the slides, will be published. Let's have a great week 8. Good night.